Before we start, I'd like to just thank the Pennyhill guys, Charlene for inviting me to present. Real honour for me. Scott for doing all the organisation, and Tom for joining us as well from the gym. I'm sure you know these people really well, but really grateful for you for allowing me to speak to other members. So this is the Alcohol-Free Advantage. My name's James Lloyd. I am an alcohol-free mindset coach. What the hell is an alcohol-free mindset coach? Is a question I commonly get asked. Well, I help people make powerful shifts in mindset that remove their desire to drink alcohol, or in some cases, reduce their desire. And for me personally, my desire to drink went altogether. And what that means is when you don't desire something, you have freedom over it. So you don't have any desire to stick a pen in your ear. You don't have to moderate sticking a pen in your ear and just stick a pen in your ear at the weekends, because it doesn't make any sense. When you remove desire, you give people true freedom to drink when they want, and maybe they don't want to drink at all. I've been alcohol-free for 3.5 years, and it's been absolutely transformational for me. I really am living my best life. It's been just incredible, and this year I've trained as a coach because I want to help other people experience the same thing. It really is absolutely life-changing. The benefits not just on health, but on focus, on diet, on exercise, financially, on all aspects of my life have been overwhelming. And I've met many people in the last 3 years who've experienced the same thing, and it really is an absolutely life-changing experience. But you might have noticed that the landscape around alcohol in the UK is changing. A lot of people are taking much more interest in their health, and Sober October, Dry January becoming a much bigger thing. So last year, for example, Dry January was done by 1 in 4 people. So that's about 15.5 million people did Dry January last year. And this year it's expected to increase to close to 20 million. So that's part of the reason why I spoke to Charlene and we agreed that we'd do this talk today, because hopefully it'll resonate with some people. Could I just ask, is there anyone in the room doing Dry January at the moment? Oh, quite a lot. So about, all over did it at Christmas, did you? So around about half then. You started 3 days ago, okay. How's it going? Anyone enjoying it? Anyone finding it quite tough? Or what's? Don't feel you have to share. I appreciate it. It can be a bit of a personal. You intended to? All right, okay. Well, do you know what? At the end of the day, I think at the end of the day, it's a break, right? It's just an opportunity to take a break. January is just an arbitrary time, but a lot more people are doing it, so I think having supporting numbers really, really helps. So, is anyone completely alcohol-free, by the way? Just me then. Okay, tough crowd. I was hoping for some brethren to support me, but not to worry. So I mentioned creating powerful mindset shifts that mean people no longer desire alcohol. Now that sounds a bit woo-woo, sounds a bit woolly. What does that mean? Well, normally when we take a break from alcohol or we moderate, we have a sense that we're depriving ourselves, that I really want to have a drink, but I'm only going to drink on a Saturday night, or I'm only going to drink 30 units a week. When you remove desire, there's no debate. If you don't want to do something, you don't do it. So you have complete control over your drinking when you remove desire. And removing desire is not the same as saying to people, you can never drink again. It's not the same thing at all. So I'd like to start by just asking you one question. If I offered you the choice to wake up one morning in the very near future with no desire to drink again, would you accept? Can I get a show of hands for yes, I would accept? Oh wow, I'm surprised. That's pretty good. So that's around about 10 people. And who would say, no, I still want to be able to drink. I still want the desire to drink. So it's probably about 60-40. Okay. So of the people that said, no, I don't want to, I still want to have the desire to drink. Could you mind just shouting out some of the reasons why? So what's the motivations, the perceived benefits that you have for wanting to still be able to have the desire? Mm-hmm. Okay. So relax, like the taste, like that kind of thing. Any others? Social? Yeah. Uh-huh. The fun, social. Yeah. Yeah, it's very common. Very common. Uh-huh. Cool. I'm not going to try and convince you otherwise. Any more? Okay. So in a poll that was done last year, these are the main reasons that people gave for why they drink alcohol. These are the benefits that people perceive. And most of them you've kind of now rattled off today, really. So to relax is the most common one. To treat myself, I like the taste, for refreshment, and to boost mood and to fit in with others are the main reasons why people drink. But controversial viewpoint, I'm going to try and explain to you why none of these things are true. Good luck, I can hear you saying. Bear with me. So who this presentation is aimed at is the middle lane. So middle lane, is anyone familiar with the term middle lane drinkers or grey area drinkers? So the middle lane pretty much fits in between people who don't drink at all, people who are completely abstinent and alcohol free, and on the other side, people who have an alcohol dependency. So that would be traditionally what you would call an alcoholic, which is about 600,000 people in the UK. Everybody else kind of fits into this middle lane, which is pretty much anyone that drinks. Now there's going to be some outliers within that, say, your grandma who just has a glass of sherry at Christmas. But what I'm trying to demonstrate from this table is that it's a lot of people kind of fit into this middle lane drinking. Most people in the UK tend to drink more than the recommended amount, which is 14 units. So the middle lane is big, and it's pretty much categorised as about 55 million people, and that's really who this presentation is aimed at. You don't need to be an alcoholic to take a break from drinking. Loads of people are doing it nowadays for many, many reasons, but there's still a stigma attached to it, and I see it all the time. If I'm out on a social event with work, and people say, "What are you drinking?" I'm like, I don't drink, or I'm not drinking tonight. They're like, "All right, you don't drink?" And they're like, "All right, you're alcoholic, were you? Okay, won't ask." but that is the general assumption, right? For most people, it's like, "Okay, you don't drink. Okay, clearly you're an alcoholic then." But it's not true, and and attitudes to it are changing as people are getting more and more into wellness. And as I showed on the previous slide, there isn't this kind of black and white normal drinker here, and then cross one line, and all of a sudden you're an alcoholic drinking vodka at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's a sliding scale, and everyone has a drink in some capacity or another, somewhere on that sliding scale. If you don't mind, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about my journey with alcohol, because I haven't always been Mr. Teetotal, as you will see from some of these pictures that weren't actually taken that long ago. So, as I said, I stopped drinking 3.5 years ago when I was 46. Pretty standard pictures, middle-aged man, drinking too much. And really, I kind of drank most days since I was sort of 16. I never took a break for longer than a week, and that would have been if I had a cold or I was sick or something like that. But I think that's quite common. I think a lot of people, certainly up until the last 5 years where dry January and sober October have become a thing, a lot of people will just do it habitually and they don't ever take any kind of break. And that was certainly the case for me. I was drinking probably about 50 to 60 units a week, so quite heavy, but not, again, what you would class as a traditional alcoholic, drinking vodka at 9 a.m. But I definitely, as I was getting into my late 30s and my early 40s, I felt that something wasn't quite right, and that I was sort of losing a bit of control over it, and it just didn't really feel right to me anymore. I was having all sorts of downstream effects from it in that I was putting on weight, as you can see for this beautiful picture in the middle, which I'll explain a bit more about in a second. I couldn't exercise really. I mean, one of the benefits I've had of quitting booze is that I've joined Pennyhill, because if you quit booze, you get free membership. Okay, that's pretty much the money. That's pretty much. So Charlie go, whoa, I didn't sign off on that. But that's pretty much the money I was saving. But I had no interest in doing any exercise when I was drinking. I kind of knew I had to do some exercise because I was approaching my 40s, and I thought I need to go out do some exercise. And I did it sort of patchy, occasionally, but I was constantly carrying around this guilt that I need to do more exercise, but I just couldn't be asked. Just didn't have the motivation. My diet was pretty rubbish. I knew what a good diet was. I knew what good nutrition was, but I just found it really hard to maintain any kind of level of consistency about it. Sleep was rubbish. I'll talk a lot more about that in a second. But the thing that really sort of stopped me being able to take a proper break from alcohol was my friendship group. I wasn't drinking any more than my friendship group, but I've always been really into live sport. So I used to go to Twickenham a lot, watch the rugby, had a season ticket at Everton, don't laugh. Used to go up to Goodison Park every other weekend, and that basically was 10 hours of drinking, either on the train or in the car with mates. all of my social activities, like I'm sure many people's are built around drinking. And I just thought, how's that going to work? How can you go to 10 hours of being at Twickenham and not drink? It's just not going to work. My friends I'd known for 30 plus years, all of the time I spent with them was around booze. And I just thought, well, it's not going to work, is it? What, we're going to do yoga together? So, no offense to anyone who likes yoga, but it really stopped me for a long time. And I also found that my mental health was really suffering. I was waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning with anxiety because I'd had a drink again when, I'd said to myself, okay, I'm not going to drink today. And then by 4 o'clock, it had all changed. And all of a sudden I was like, you know what, I quite fancy a pint. And I just was sleeping really, really badly. And I'll just explain this picture in the middle at this point. So the picture on the far right was on my 46th birthday, where we hired a boat, me and about 12 friends. My lovely wife, Kristen, was on the boat as well. And we went up and down the Thames. It was probably about 7 or 8 hours on the boat, drinking all day, really hot day, 85-degree weather. And me and a bunch of my best mates thought, you know what, let's jump in the river. Really, why not? Fantastic. Swam around, had a bit of a good time for about a quarter of an hour with my mates, climbed back on the boat. I was so out of shape, I couldn't drag my arse back onto the boat. And I was stuck, stranded in the river until this rather kind gentleman had to attempt to pull me out of the river whilst his family looked on in disgust. But what you can't see is there's people on either side of the bank just laughing at me, ridiculing me. It was the most humiliating experience of my life. I never had, most people, or a lot of people who stop drinking have a rock bottom moment. And I never had a rock bottom moment as such, but this was getting there. It was quite a lot of public humiliation. And there'd been a few of these that had kind of happened over my 40s. And I just thought, oh, no, this just can't go on. And the final point that I want to say as well is I also felt that I wasn't kind of showing up for my wife as a good husband because I wasn't always present. I think sometimes when we're drinking, you're not your authentic self. That sounds a little bit cliche, but you're not your real self, and some people say, well, I'm more fun when I've had a drink, but you're not. Your friends are attracted to you because they like the real you. And I just, we'd go out, we'd go to the theatre, and I'd be thinking, okay, right, the interval's going to be at 8 o'clock. I can get 2 pints then, bring them back, and then afterwards we go to the pub, and it just all this going on in my head all the time, just thinking about when we're going to get another beer. And I just thought, that's just not right. And we'd have arguments because, I'd be acting like a twat. And, the amount of times I'd go to bed in the spare room after an argument, knowing that I was in the right, and then wake up the next day and be like, oh no, I can't keep doing this. And I just thought, if this carries on, then I'm going to wake up on my own one day. So things needed to change, and I just didn't know how to change it. I'll tell you how I changed it in a little while. But that was kind of my story. Is there anything in there that resonates for anyone? Some parts of that, because it's all really common. I think a lot of us people think that it's just me that can't stop after one drink. Why can everybody else just have one and then stop, and I can't? And a lot of people can do that, but the numbers show that the majority of people can't, because alcohol's addictive. You naturally want more of it. Some people can switch it off. My wife, Kristen, can do that, but I could never do that. It's quite common. Enough about me. It's taken me this long to get to the agenda, but don't worry, I'll get done in time, I promise. We've got 3 main points we're going to talk about today. The first one is the power of taking a break. Some people are already doing it in this room. That's fantastic. And then I'm going to talk about challenging your subconscious beliefs. And that's how I quit the booze. It's going to challenge my subconscious beliefs. I'll talk a lot more about that. The final part is a dry January toolkit or take a break toolkit. It works any month you want. Okay, power of taking a break. So this is a bold statement, which I'm going to attempt to back up over the next few slides. Taking a break from alcohol can be the biggest intervention we can make that will improve virtually every aspect of our lives. It's a tall order, that. But I'm going to have a go at backing that up for you. First of all, I'd like to talk about alcohol and health and where there's real huge benefits on the health side. There's four pillars that represent health and wellness. And these are recognised by all healthcare professionals, everyone in the wellness industry. And the 4 pillars are diet and nutrition, exercise, movement, sleep, mental health, and human connection. Human connection, mental health kind of go into one pillar. And there isn't really any other areas of health and wellness apart from these 4. You can't fit into these 4. And alcohol impacts all 4 of these in a huge, huge way. It limits all of them. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that over the next sort of few slides. But these pillars don't operate in isolation. They're all interconnected and they all interact with each other all the time. So, a very rudimentary example is that, if you eat well, you generate the motivation to exercise. If you exercise, you sleep well. If you sleep well, you reduce your anxiety, less stress because you're well slept. Very basic example, but you understand what I'm referring to. But most importantly, is consistency. Consistency is everything. Tom and I were talking about this earlier. I'm going to reference a couple of the personal trainers in the room. I'm sure any personal trainer will tell you, Tom, what is the single most important thing with any fitness regime? Exactly. I'm glad you said quality because I'm going to come on to that in a second. But consistency is everything in health and wellness, not just in exercise, but in diet. It's all very well, eating well 3 days a week and then eating crap the other 4 days. You've got to do it every day, pretty much. Sleep. There's a lot of research that will show you that, in fact, any sleep scientist will tell you that the single most important thing you can do for sleep is to get up and go to bed at the same time every single day, consistently. You don't need an alarm after a month because your body's just knows what to expect. The body thrives off routine and knowing what's going to happen. Alcohol destroys consistency. You think about going to the gym, you're like, I'm going to go to the gym today, you've got a hangover, can't be asked. Diet, going to eat well, no one wants a salad when they've got a hangover. Fact. Well, most people, I'm sure. Just going to look at these pillars very quickly one at a time. So diet and nutrition, everyone knows that alcohol stimulates appetite. We eat more when we're drinking, but we don't crave salads. We crave beige food, high carb, high fat, high sugar, stuff that's rubbish for us. But it's not just on the night when you want a kebab, it's the next day, and sometimes it extends even further than that. The other impact that alcohol has on diet is it actually prevents us from taking the benefit from a lot of the good food we do eat. So we find it much more difficult to absorb nutrients from food when we've been drinking. So you can eat well, but if you've been drinking as well, you're not going to get the benefit from that food. And we look at gut health. Gut health is a huge area of science that's just exploded in the last 10 years and is continuing to evolve. But we're learning so much about gut health and how incredibly important it is. The gut's often referred to as the second brain. 70% of our immune cells are held within our gut. And what alcohol does to the gut is it disrupts the gut microbiome and the gut microbiota. The gut microbiota is basically the diversity of good bacteria in our stomach. So if you sort of think about when you go to a hospital and you put hand sanitizer over your hands, which is effectively alcohol, you're doing that to kill bacteria, right? Well, you're pouring that on your insides. You're killing all of your good bacteria, which are incredibly important for us. There's been a study done recently that shows that the health of our gut bacteria actually dictates how we feel pain. So if you've got a really weakened gut microbiome, you're going to feel pain more. I mean, that's actually just blows my mind. That's kind of quite new science. And then there's weight loss. Weight loss is a huge thing when it comes to alcohol. So everyone knows the term empty calories with regards to alcohol, and that has no nutrients in it, no fiber, no protein. But again, there's a lot more to it than that. What happens when we drink alcohol is our bodies are unable to store the calories as fat from alcohol. So we've evolved over 6 million years to store calories as fat. Over the years gone by when we didn't have refrigerators and supermarkets at the end of the road, and we could only eat so much food of what was available, our bodies would store it for the winter months when we needed it. But what happens when we drink alcohol is that we can't process calories into fat. They have to be burnt off straight away. We have to use those calories straight away. So what happens is it's processed as heat. So when you sort of see people with the red nose, the red wine nose, people are generally quite sedentary. That is the alcohol being burnt off by the system in the form of heat. Anyway, what does all this mean? What it basically means in terms of weight loss is that if you have alcohol in your system, your body is using those calories first. It has to prioritize burning the alcohol calories first before any of the food calories. So if you haven't had 1,000 calories from alcohol and 2,000 from food, you're straight away going to use the alcohol calories first. And whatever's left over from the food is going to get stored. So you'll put weight on much more easily. I should say, by the way, if anyone's got any questions or wants to jump in, please do stop me. Oh, okay. Good stuff. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's the same. I'm actually going to come on to that on the next slide, actually, because it's what happens with exercise. is that your body, drinking takes an awful lot of resource out of your body to process the alcohol, because you're right, it's a poison that has to get broken down, and it puts a lot of stress on our system. Which brings me on to exercise, which is probably the area that suffers the most from a lack of consistency due to alcohol. We've kind of spoken about this. It's very difficult to motivate yourself day in, day out to do exercise when you've been drinking. A lot of people will go to the gym to out-exercise a hangover, which really is kind of trying to deal with the guilt, I think. You think, well, I've had a big night out, well, I'll go to the gym, everything will be all right, we'll kind of address the balance, but it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all, and it's partly because of what we just said there, actually. It would take so much resource for our body to clear alcohol out that when you go to the gym, it's like what Tom said about quality. You're not showing up and doing good quality exercise that's doing your body any good, because it impairs our physical performance. It impacts our cardiovascular system. So any kind of endurance sport is much more difficult. You're just not set up to do that if you've been drinking, and it takes a real toll on the body. And so the flip side of that is when you're not drinking, you have all this extra energy. Part of that comes from your sleep, because when you sleep well, it's so much more raring to go. And for me, sleep is probably the biggest benefit of quitting alcohol or taking a break from alcohol by far. The benefits are enormous to your sleep. First of all, I'd like to sort of think about sleep from an evolutionary perspective. So we sleep for a third of our lives. That really just tells you how incredibly important and vital it is to us, because if it wasn't, evolution would have either phased sleep out altogether or reduced the amount of time that we sleep for. Because, as we've evolved over millions of years, over 6 million years, we didn't have houses, and we didn't have readily available food, and we had to go out and hunt. You're not going to sleep for a third of your life. It's not incredibly important. So what happens when we sleep with regards to alcohol? It stops us getting into the restorative stages of sleep. So let me just explain a little bit more about that. We sleep in 3 stages, basically. The first one is light sleep, when you're sort of just going to sleep. And the second stage is slow wave deep sleep, followed by REM sleep. Those 2 second stages are where our body repairs cognitively and physically. Those are the really important areas of sleep. Now, it takes us to get into the second and third stages of sleep. Our bodies normally have to drop about 2 degrees. That's why if you sleep in an air-conditioned room as opposed to a hot room, it's much, much more easier to sleep, because your body needs to drop 2 degrees to get to sleep. When we're drinking, obviously our heart rate increases, and you're hotter, and it makes it hard to get beyond this sort of first stage of sleep. Now, our bodies traditionally, not traditionally, but generally kind of phase through these stages of sleep about 6 to 7 times a night. So they're on 90-degree cycles. But when we've been drinking, we have an excess of stimulants in our system. Now, alcohol is a depressant, not a stimulant. But because of when I talk about depressants, I'm talking about things that depress, like slow down function. I don't mean depressive from a really sad kind of point of view, maybe. But what happens is when we have alcohol in our system as a depressant, our bodies release natural stimulants to counteract the depressant. It's called homeostasis. You may have heard of this. When we've got these excess stimulants in our system, the alcohol wears off after a couple of hours, and then we're awake all of a sudden 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, because we've got all these stimulants in our system and the depressant's gone. It's a bit like having an espresso at 3 o'clock in the morning, effectively. This is why people wake up and they can't get back to sleep, and their heart's palpitating. It's kind of the science behind it, basically. If you have a smartwatch, you can track, obviously, sleep. I'm sure some people have done that before, and you can see the stages of sleep that you're in when you're drinking and you're not drinking. And it makes an absolutely enormous difference. But just when I was talking about the importance of consistency for good habits, it's the same for bad habits. So if you drink a glass of wine a night with dinner, maybe a beer, this still happens. You still find it very difficult to get into those second and third stages of sleep. It's not just after you've had a skinful. So if you're doing that 5 nights a week, 6 nights a week, you're kind of robbing yourself of really quality sleep. And I'm not sort of saying that, sure. It does take, well, what tends to happen when people take a break at first, sometimes it does take about 2 weeks or so for this to sort of flush out. Obviously, everybody's different, and it depends on your own body makeup and things like that. Sometimes at first, it can be a little bit disruptive in terms of you don't all of a sudden sleep brilliantly. It can take a few weeks for it to sort of shake out, but it's kind of different for everybody.
being a little bit older, age comes into it.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that's something
Yeah,
alcohol,
absolutely.
no alcohol, even among older people.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, sorry. Never so well. Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting, actually. That's yeah. Good stuff. And the last pillar, the last pillar before we move on is mental well-being. Obviously, mental health has become an enormous topic in the last 10 years, to such an extent that around about a third of people under 25 don't drink now. That's not purely down to mental health. There's obviously a lot more awareness of mental health in younger people, partly to do with finance as well. But the impact of mental health is huge, and particularly when we talk about stress. I know a couple of people I spoke to a moment ago mentioned about stress and helping them cope with pressure and relax and unwind and things like that. But what alcohol really does is it removes the stress that it put there in the first place. It's like cigarettes. So you sort of think about somebody who smokes 20 a day and then doesn't have a cigarette for 12 hours. You give them a cigarette, like, oh, alcohol's a drug. It is. And then with any drug, you have withdrawal. So what tends to happen when you're having a drink, you've not had a drink for a couple of days, if you're used to drinking habitually, even if it's just a few glasses of wine a night, when you're not drinking, you're in withdrawal. So straight away, when you have a drink the next day, it's relieving the withdrawal, like the example on the cigarette. So it's only removing the stress that they put there in the first place. I'm not suggesting for a second that without drinking, we'd have no problems in life. I'm not saying that at all. But when we're not drinking, we're much more emotionally resilient to deal with problems. And there's a bit of science behind that, and it's to do with dopamine receptors in our brain. So alcohol stimulates dopamine. So what's the best part of having a drink? It's that first hour, right? That first couple of drinks, that first hour, it feels amazing. And it does. And I'm not going to try and tell you it doesn't. It's because alcohol stimulates dopamine in your brain. But you can never get that first hour back again. Doesn't matter how much you drink, and this tends to be the pattern for a lot of people, certainly was for me, is you're constantly chasing 5, 6, 7 pints trying to get that first hour back. But you can't, because homeostasis kicks in again. And our bodies sense that we have too much dopamine in our system, and they release a chemical that counteracts the dopamine. And that's called dynorphin. But dynorphin stays in our system for 8 to 10 hours. So when the alcohol's worn off after a couple of hours, we're walking around with our system full of dynorphin, which basically is anti-dopamine. It makes us feel low mood. It's effectively a depressant. So if you've been out on a bender and you wake up and you've been out till midnight, that was a bender for me. I was a 4-year-old, but if it's in your system for 8 to 10 hours, you can be waking up the next day, 9, 10 o'clock, and it's still in your system. That's pretty much what anxiety is. And if you're somebody who drinks regularly, 8 to 10 hours is quite a long time. You're walking around with residual dynorphin in your system a lot of the time. And that's just basically making you feel kind of quite down and depressed and anxiety. And this is part of, once you kind of know this about dynorphin, I don't want to ruin drinking for anybody, but that first hour, that's about as good as it gets. Because after that, the dynorphin kicks in and the dopamine is kind of neutralized. So just to wrap up on the 4 pillars, when you remove alcohol, it's effectively like a superpower. It's like a limitless pill. It boosts all 4 of your pillars of wellness. And I've only sort of touched upon these in a very kind of light way, but there isn't anything to do with health and wellness that doesn't fit into these 4 pillars. And hopefully I've given you some kind of good argument as to the impact that alcohol has on all of these. But I'm not finished. Menopause is an absolutely huge topic. My wife Kristen is a menopause champion in her workplace, so it's something that's kind of quite close to my heart as well. But during perimenopause, women go through changes in the brain. That's fundamentally what happens with menopause. And as I've just spoken about, homeostasis is hormone disruption. So alcohol is a massive hormone disruptor. So when you're already going through hormonal changes in the brain and you're throwing on another hormone disruptor, it is in a sense like throwing petrol on a bonfire. There's a bit more to it than that. It's a bit more nuanced than that. You know, as this lady said a second ago here, as you get older, you become less able to process alcohol. So the problem, becomes worse. And often a lot what happens with menopause is we put a lot of problems to do with alcohol into the menopause bucket. Things like depression, anxiety, IBS, weight gain. We think, well, it's menopause. But actually, if you remove alcohol, a lot of these things go away. And it's an area that, like I say, doesn't really get talked about enough. Is becoming a lot more talked about in the last 5 years or so, as is alcohol. But it's a very, very real topic. And the NHS released a report last year that basically indicated that the population, the section of the population that now drinks the most is middle-aged women, which is, really concerning because middle-aged women are more at risk from the dangers of alcohol than anybody else. So I said to you at the beginning of this section that taking a break from alcohol was the single biggest intervention you can do to improve virtually every aspect of your lives. I've touched upon the health aspects, but there's more to it than that. I'm not going to go through these in detail. This is going to be my final slide in this section. But imagine you had more time, more energy, improved sleep, better mental health, improved productivity and focus, felt more motivated, felt less anxious, nourished your body more, reduced symptoms of menopause, were present for your friends and family, were your authentic self 100% of the time, had more money, improved your overall health, and this is the big one, felt happier most days. And honestly, it really is like that. It certainly has been for me. I am so happy most days. I met, one day Chris and I were in Amsterdam, and we met a friend of Chris's who was quite a big boozer, Scottish lady. And this was about a year before I quit alcohol. And she'd been a year alcohol free at that point. And I never forget what she said to me. I was really fascinated because I was really proper sober curious at that point. And I said to her, what's it like? And she said, I just smile all the time. And I've never, it makes it sound like a lunatic, but I mean, I've never forgotten that. But it generally is like that. I find myself just happy most of the time. And maybe it's to do with other things, I don't know, but I put it down to alcohol. That's around about half time. Has anybody got any comments or questions that they'd like to throw into the mix? Of course. I think it's going to have a similar effect in terms of the homeostasis. But I think with caffeine, it's cleared our system. As long as you don't really drink off sort of 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I think coffee's got a half-life of about 9 hours. So you can kind of clear it within that time. But I'll be honest, I'm not a coffee expert, but I think there probably is a little bit of that. Yeah. Yeah, it probably won't help you sleep, actually. I tend to sort of switch to decaf in the evenings, but mm, Jesus. Yeah, yeah. Ooh. Ooh.
just putting it out there.
Be careful, they might put the alcohol prices up.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, level matching. Deals on 25% off.
Yeah.
I think